Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. On behalf of the entire IFDA team and the Florida Department of Education, we thank you for taking the time today to join us. I'm June Rawl, IFDA's Director. Today's webinar, Paving the Way to Career Pathways, Creating the Skill On-Ramps for Our ESOL Learners' Needs, is facilitated today by Jamie Adelson Goldstein. We are so grateful that she has taken some time out of her busy schedule to share with us a rich wealth of resources that can help us prepare our ESOL students for employment and academic achievement. Jamie is a teacher, a Florida State trainer, a national trainer, and so much more. She's currently facilitating a project for Florida's Links ESL Pro project. This project prepares English learners for work and career pathways. The ESL Pro project is an initiative of the U.S. Department of Education and OCDE, and we are also working with the Florida Department of Education. The project provides professional development to adult ESOL teachers in the area of college and career readiness and career pathways and promotes ongoing inquiry and collaboration through a community of practice. You'll be hearing more about this exciting project soon. If any of the Florida trainers are on the call today, we welcome you and we applaud your work and look forward to hearing more about the outcomes of this exciting project. Today's webinar will provide you with opportunities to ask questions and respond to the ideas behind contextualizing ESOL instruction for work and career pathways. It's such important work that is so relevant to our ESOL learners. Remember that all of our IFDA webinars are recorded and can be viewed again and again and shared with your other colleagues. Now I'm going to turn the webinar over to Jamie, and thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, June. And hello, everybody. That's me over in the corner. And I'm trying as best I can to match my emoji. And that's something that, not everyone aspires to, but I am at this point. I'd like to find out a little bit about you, and we're going to take a poll to discover your primary role. So we, as you know, needs assessment is at the core of everything we do. So if you would select whether you are primarily an instructor, a coordinator, administrator, or other, equally important but not on that list. And it's looking like we are primarily instructors today. And by we, I don't mean to do that in that obnoxious tone, but the group is primarily instructors, and we have a healthy collection of other equally important people, and about 25% administration coordinator. And then I have one more. I'm going to close the poll and ask for you to take a look at this next one, which is your take on career pathways for ESOL. At this time, just taking a personal temperature, would you say that you're enthused, curious, confused, or not yet won over? And if those don't exactly match what you're feeling right now, pick the one that is closest to that. And I see that we have a split between enthused and curious. Very few, as in none, are confused. But we do have a small contingent that are not yet won over. So it is my hope that by the end of our session today, you will have moved a little bit more towards the curious, if not the fully enthused side of things, if you're not quite won over yet. Okay, so we're going to continue on. Joseph, and June, I just want to let you know that I'm not able to see or move the question panel. So if there are any questions, I would appreciate it if you would let me know. I'm just going to give you a minute to take a look at this, this quote. And we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about what that good jobs phrase means. And then take a look at the continuation of the quote. This is from Joseph Biden's report about adult education and what is needed. And there's a complete bibliography of many, many different career pathways resources in this wonderful document that you'll have access to. I don't know whether it was sent to you ahead of time, but you definitely will have access to it after the webinar. This is the issue brief put out through the ESL Links Pro project, written by Heidi Spruck-Wrigley, and it is part of a suite of materials that talks to and provides professional development for teachers and programs who want to infuse career pathways, in fact, want to put career pathways into English language instruction. And many of the things that you're seeing here today come from the issue brief or the module or the piece that I worked on, which was the companion learning resource. So we know that there is definitely a need in the United States and throughout the world actually to upskill adults. What we need to know in terms of the why for ESOL, Betsy Parrish and Kimberly Johnson said very well in their piece, being quite prescient in 2010, that the skills our learners need in order to transition to the higher levels of education or employment have to start right from the beginning in our ESOL classes. And that's maybe creating a little bit of a challenge for some of us in terms of our culture of teaching ESOL with life skills or grammar focus, but we're going to see how those elements really do combine in career pathways instruction through the contextualization of English language instruction. Now, it's one thing to know that there's been a report that says adult learners need to be skilled. It's another thing to look at another piece of research that says ESOL learners definitely need to have these skills from the earliest level up. But this slide to me really deepens our understanding of how important this is to the nation, to an informed citizenry, to a society that can continue forward. 1/3 of the 35 million low-skilled adults in the U.S. are immigrants. That really puts a tremendous emphasis on our work as ESOL teachers, because these learners need the skills, and they have many of the same issues that all adult learners have. Insufficient time, lots of outside obligations, and they have added on to that language needs. So for today, in this very truncated version of everything you want to know about contextualizing for career pathways and work, we're going to describe the rationale for contextualizing, which we did a little bit just then, identify correlations between contextualization and English language development, because first and foremost, as ESOL instructors and program directors and significant other people, our job is language. And communication. That's the underpinning of what we do, with the goal towards increasing our learners' ability to find good jobs, to succeed in post-secondary training and education, and to move and transition into positions and achieve their goals. And our third goal for today is really to look very kind of from a helicopter view of how we can infuse career awareness across ESOL levels. There are many, many more activities and types of instructional resources available to us that talk about all the different aspects of contextualizing for work and career pathways. But today, because of our time frame and also just because of the need to step into this step by step, we're going to look at career awareness as our starting place. So let me ask you, how would you define contextualized instruction? And I'm just going to give you 30 seconds, 15 seconds maybe, to think about that. And if you have any questions about that you want me to answer or to see, I'm going to need June to let me know that those are in there, because I don't know why, but they're just not popping up for me. So here's a definition straight out of the research. Contextualization refers to the integration of English language and basic skills instruction within the context of general career and workplace readiness topics, or within the context of a general occupational area such as healthcare, construction, or information technology, or within the context of a specific type of technical training such as pharmacy technician or a culinary training program. So this is contextualization, not the way that we've thought about it per se over the last 10 years. I mean, contextualization has been talked about in this way, but most ESOL teachers have thought about contextualization as providing context for whatever the language point was. And that's true. But what we're now talking about is that that context becomes general career, workplace readiness, a general occupational area, or a specific type of training. And each of these actually relates to different types of career pathways or contextualized classes. Now you may remember that just a few minutes ago I talked about language and literacy as being our bailiwick. This is who we are. The text on the left comes from that issue brief that I mentioned earlier. And what it breaks down to is saying that language and literacy is the overarching factor, but within that, we're matching the skill demands of worker training. We're creating a supportive environment. So the learner, this is something we don't have to learn about. This is what we do. We create a supportive environment because language learning is extremely stressful. Immigrant lives are generally extremely stressful, and we know that in order for learning to occur, we need to support the learner, and we need to scaffold instruction, and we need to make sure that the classroom feels safe. That's not to say there can't be a struggle, an intellectual struggle going on, a rigorous and robust academic program, but the learner is supported in his or her path through that struggle. And then the other aspect that's brought out by this text on the left is the idea of authentic materials. Now, authentic doesn't necessarily mean it can't be adapted or scaffolded, because certainly we'll see this in a little bit, but if you're going to be using workplace materials with low beginning level literacy learners, but beginning low learners, you're going to need to adapt the material. But the core of the material is authentic. It is relevant to what learners will see outside the classroom. So we've defined contextualization. Now let's look at the definition of a good job, because that's what the WIOA, the Workforce Opportunity and Innovation Act, talks about for our purposes. And what we're meant to be doing is to help learners move onto a career pathway which moves them towards good jobs. And jobs that are considered to be good jobs are family sustaining. They are middle skill jobs initially, because those middle skill jobs require some post-secondary ed, but not a four-year degree, because our learners don't necessarily have the time to invest or the funding to invest in a four-year degree, but they need to invest time and energy in the programs that will train them towards these good jobs. And one more definition for the road. What's a career pathway? Well, it's a sequence. It's a sequence of training steps, each associated with a certificate. It really helps us if our learners, it helps us and it helps our learners if we know the career pathways for the job industries that have the highest growth rate in our local area. And healthcare comes as no surprise. Technology, it depends what area of technology, because technology in certain areas has taken a dive, but web developers, that has a 27% increase over the next 10 years. So we can find out this information and share with learners what the wage increases are from step to step on a career pathway. What type of training is needed from step to step. This helps the learners get a bigger picture and be able to really set goals. We know a lot of times our learners will say, well, I want to get a job, or I want to learn English, and these are too broad. We need to help the learner really get specific and see how his or her persistence in learning English, increasing their job skills, will actually lead towards achieving a very specific goal. So one of the challenges we've had in the ESOL community at large across the US is that we have been siloed. So we worked in ESOL and CTE worked in CTE, and academic skills prep was really, it maybe occurred in a bridge program, but it wasn't really seen as something that was part of either of the other silos. It was more for an intensive English program. In fact, all three of these need to come together for our learners. And the reason we know they need to come together is that we have identified through the research the needs of learners across the board. If you look at this list, it should feel very comforting, because certainly the first two bullets, which are paramount, are part and parcel. They're our bread and butter in ESOL instruction. So this is not a huge step away from what we've been doing. It's a deepening, perhaps a little bit more rigorizing approach to what we've been doing. Workplace readiness skills have always been part of Florida's, I'm going to forget the word for it now. June, throw it to me if you can. Competencies, thank you. Sorry, just turned 60 and the nouns are gone. But the Florida's competency list has always included workplace readiness. What we're going to look at is where else workplace readiness comes in. If we're talking about daily routines, that has a connection to workplace schedules. If we're talking about just times of day, that has a connection to showing up late, showing up early. There are a lot of things that we can connect to that we've been doing in other ways in our classes. Soft skills is a huge, huge area, and it may be the #1 area that employers across the board identify as being missing in all of their employees. Or not all of them, obviously, but the ones that they complain about. And that's true for the native and the non-native speaker alike. So we have a wonderful opportunity to get the language of soft skills into our classes and prepare our learners from a very early point of language development all the way through to when they transition. Now, the occupational skills and the credentials required by the employer, these are elements that we are going to have to look at more carefully in our ESOL classes when we're looking at different types of integrated instruction. It's important, and we have a module through the ESL Pro project. We have a module that really shows you how you can find out the information for a particular skill, occupational area, or how you find out what credentials are needed. But there's also a lot of this information online, and there will be a lot of that information available through the state. The state's going to supply a lot of this. But we need to be thinking about it ahead of time. Here's another challenge. I know it's a challenge we're all aware of, and that is that our learners don't have buckets of time to invest. 4 years in ESOL, another 3 years in CTE, maybe another 2 years of occupational training. It really, it needs to be happening simultaneously, and it can happen simultaneously, so that we can allow learners to stop out at each level of a career pathway, but that they see that what they're doing has immediate relevance to the job that they want and the job that they hope to have in the future. Now, all of this certainly could get a little overwhelming, but I love this information, and so I share it with you. And just because I like to read it, I will. The power of being an immigrant. Immigrants face barriers, but when it comes to transferable skills like problem solving, adaptability, or cross-cultural competency, newcomers have the advantage over other job seekers. And I think if we reflect on our learners, we can see how true that is. What a rich experiential background our learners bring to the very concept of problem solving. And again, that's one of the soft skills that employers are always asking for. Now I'm going to throw out one more set of challenges before we move forward, because they really reflect the rationale. These 4 statements are statements that I've heard in various forms throughout the US. This is not just Floridian statements. This is These are statements from Illinois and Wisconsin and New York teachers concerned about the situation. The not yet won over. So the first one of teaching life skills is essential for learners. Students need to be at an advanced level before they can participate in work or career preparation classes. And then the last one, which I think is the one that sometimes has people pull back from this whole concept. We have to be experts in the content we present to our learners in order to effectively integrate basic skills and employment skills. We would have to become experts in each of the CTE courses in order to do this. Let's see how we address those challenges. It's true, teaching life skills has an essential element to it, especially for a newcomer who may not have an understanding or ability to navigate the community, needs healthcare information, needs to be able to work with his or her child in terms of the school. But employability skills are also life skills, and identifying career pathways that help, oops, I wonder what happened there. Identifying career pathways that help learners achieve sustainable family wages is essential. So these employability skills are as important as what we've been teaching, and we can combine them, as I mentioned earlier, with some of the more rudimentary life skills that we put into beginning levels. Let's see if this one comes out right. Students need to be at an advanced level before they can participate in work or career preparation classes. That's a concern we have, yet we know from what Betsy Parrish and Kimberly Johnson said that our learners need to start working on this from the beginning. Truthfully, our students can participate in classes that are contextualized for work or career preparation as long as they have materials that are at the appropriate language level. And I wanted to show you that, oh, it looks like something got lost. I'm just going to take a moment and see if I can figure out what got lost. Yes, there we are. I want to show you that more and more materials are becoming available. This is a page from the newest edition of the Oxford Picture Dictionary, which I happen to have access to because I'm currently working on it. But this is a page of soft skills. So you're going to have, at the low level, many publishers producing materials that will support this type of instruction. Now I'm going to go out here really quickly and make sure that we get to this one. Sorry, don't mean to make you dizzy. So then this last challenge, which is really addresses, I think, the rationale for the contextualization at its heart. The idea that we'd have to be experts in every field in order to be able to contextualize, it's not true. Our expertise is in English language acquisition. What we do is apply our expertise to the ready-made content, to the employability materials, to local industries' identified needs. It's a natural extension of what we do. We don't need to become CTE experts. We need to become experts in the language that our learners need. So how do we go about doing that? There are a few contextualized models. The first one is just the general contextualized ESOL class. This is the class where it's fronted by an ESOL teacher. The teacher looks through the Florida State competencies, looks at the CASAS competencies, looks at her textbook, looks at what the local industries are in the area, looks at her learners' interests and needs, and develops a contextualized curriculum that primarily will focus on career awareness, identifying future pathways, probably many workplace readiness skills like problem solving, working in teams, soft skills. It's still within the general contextualized ESOL vein. The Bridge ESOL class, Florida has many of these. And this is the class that usually at a higher level, high intermediate or advanced, that will start the learners working with the more specific information about the careers in which they're interested, healthcare industry or technology, and it may have more than one. It may be that there would be units that would have to do with general career clusters, And within that bridge class, the learners are getting the academic skills so critical to surviving in career training. Career training classes require heavy-duty listening and reading, and to some extent, depending on the class, writing skills. Certainly a lot of teamwork and communication skills. So the bridge classes would be aimed at a student who is higher level, has had an opportunity to develop general workplace readiness skills, and is ready to start thinking about a more specific transition. The IBEST class is the Integrated Basic Education and Skills Training class. I think I got that right. I sometimes mess up on that, but it's an integrated skills class where there is it's team taught with a CTE teacher and an ESOL teacher, and they're working in a specific career area. For example, the one that so many of us know about is the certified nursing assistants, and in many cases it's a pre-CNA class where the teacher is working with the ESOL students on the language from the CNA book, and a nurse is also teaching the class so that the students come out with a certificate of having completed in the pre-CNA class, they completed the pre-CNA training, but there also may be a version where there's an actual CNA credential that happens with the ESOL teacher in the classroom. There's some tricky elements to this. IBEST in Florida is called FICAPS, and it's being developed for ESOL in some piloting programs right now. But IBEST is also something that is going to be looked at very seriously by the federal government in terms of funding. They want to see that programs have these opportunities for students. There it is. I put it in there for myself. Integrated Basic Education and Skills Training. I think I got it right. And then the other kind of class that they're looking for is the concurrent class. So in a situation where it's not possible to have the class be team taught, then there would be an ESOL class that would be linked closely to a CTE class. Those teachers would probably do a lot of back and forth working together to identify the issues for both with the CTE materials and with the language needed. And that ESOL teacher would support what learners needed to succeed in the CTE class. That teacher would hopefully also inform the CTE teacher of effective techniques such as asking comprehension questions in the middle of a lecture, providing visuals, scaffolding, and doing just solid, good educational techniques that ESOL has been aware of for a very long time. And it's not to say that CTE hasn't, but CTE doesn't necessarily have the same kind of training that ESOL teachers have had. So there would be a great collaboration. And the last type of program is the work-based class, which is the on-site ESOL class that is being taught because the industry has asked the teacher or the program to come in. It's very specific to that industry. And of course, the teacher in that situation is working on a very specific curriculum that has been developed in conjunction with that industry. So what are the first steps on the path? We've talked about what it could look like in several different situations, but what is it that the learner needs right from the beginning? And these elements that you see to the left and right of the path, these are really the skills that and the exploration that the learner needs to participate in before they can get anywhere specific. So we'll look a little bit more closely at these. June, have I got any questions? I just want to take a pause and check in.
I have one question.
Okay. Can you read it to me, Joseph?
The question is, what is the difference between ESOL, CTE, and Bridge?
Okay. So ESOL is the general program starting from beginning literacy all the way through the advanced level. CTE is the career training education, which is not a language teaching course. It is a course that's based on different careers. So you could have a CTE course on installing computer installation or cable installation. You could have a CTE course on certified nursing assistants, medical transcribers, pharmacy assistants. And the bridge course is at the end of this ESOL program that helps the learner bridge from the highest level of ESOL into either academic, a post-secondary academic setting or a post-secondary career setting. Thank you, Joseph. So as I mentioned, one of the things that we have to do with our learners, and what I even did with you to a certain degree, was assess learners' needs. And part of the learner's need is determined by what goals they have. And those goals then let them know that they need X, Y, or Z. So the learner may not really be aware of all of the needs he or she has until they take an inventory to see what it is they want to do, and then from what they want to do or where they're already skilled, what kinds of goals they can set. And one of the great resources out there is My Next Move, which is comes from the ONET online, and for you all the live in the PowerPoint, but there's also another link to something I'll show you that has lots and lots of resources. But on My Next Move, Florida used to have choices. I believe there's a new, it's not choices, but it's another inventory. But since I couldn't get that link, I put the My Next Move on here because that's something that is incredibly useful. It's useful for us as teachers because we can see the kind of language that's asked. You know, you can see here in the picture on the right, the learners asked to say whether they, love to do something, they like to do something, they hate to do it, they've never done it. And that language, build things, prepare food, that's something that we can start introducing relatively early in our ESOL learners' instruction. Another type of inventory that I found to be terrific for increasing all language skills is to provide a question survey. Each student gets a single question. These are at different levels. So the can you question, obviously for the beginning level learners. Do you know how to, little higher ability to. And what happens is each student gets a separate question. So I have a question. Joseph has a question. Can you repair computers? And June has a question. Can you prepare food? We go around and ask our classmates our question, and we tally the responses on the back of our paper or on a separate piece of paper. Now, if you have a lot of students, you could have the class split in half, and you could have them asking their individual questions to half the class. And then the partners could come together that had the same question, and they would add their tallies. But once you've tallied the responses, that gives these learners then an opportunity to chart and report data. Very important academic and workplace skill. So you provide the academic frame, 25% of us can, or 9 out of 10 of us rated, or very few people know how to. And we can do that in text, oral report, or we can chart it. So this very simple little activity is chock full of workplace skills and language development. And it also provides an inventory that's going on live in your classroom. It doesn't have to be that you sit down and create an inventory and then score the inventory. The learners can take on this process for themselves. It also really helps if you're looking at developing career awareness, for you to be aware of career clusters and to help your learners be aware of career clusters. And the career clusters are obviously sets of similarly skilled thematically linked jobs. And the way to many of the different resources are use the career clusters as a navigational tool. So on the left-hand side of the Occupational Outlook Handbook, also an incredible resource, you see a lot of those career clusters. And here they are up close and personal. Now, as it happens in Florida, those that you see in red are the top industries. And that was research I did a few months ago. So that could have changed, things change. But that is also something to be aware of. If you're going to spend time with your class thinking about different career clusters, it pays to spend the time in class as a whole group on those that have the highest growth rate. However, your learners can spend time on those that are of highest interest to them. So I've now talked for a very long time. I'm going to give you 30 seconds of blessed silence to reflect on how you could make use of the career clusters with only one S. I got very enthusiastic, obviously. Career clusters in your teaching. And at this point, too, if you would like to write any questions. I would sing to you, but that would really be annoying. Joseph, have any questions come in?
Yeah, can you access the view menu at the top of your control panel and activate questions?
I cannot, the same way I could not do the poll. I'm having the same issue.
Okay. 1 second.
That's why I'm asking. Otherwise, I would never ask. I would much prefer to be able to read them. So if you wouldn't mind, I would be reading them aloud anyway, Joseph. So if you wouldn't mind just letting me know what they are, that would be great.
There are no active questions right now.
Oh, there are none. Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Okay, thank you very much. So let's take a moment and look at what happens in our classes naturally that we can move towards infusing career exploration. In the listening and speaking portion of our classes, we are obviously working on the communication fluency and accuracy, and part of that is vocabulary and grammar, and of course pronunciation. So one of the things that we can do to increase the contextualization for work and career pathways in a listening lesson is to have learners listen to interviews with different workers and then ask comprehension questions. That's really not a big sidestep. That's really something that would be very natural for us to do, and we can go look at any textbook and you'll find opportunities for those types of interviews. But how much better to go online and see the YouTube videos with interviews, or even not so much an interview, but just an opportunity for someone to be describing what he does, and those are all over ONET as well. Having students ask and answer questions about their job interests is another way to be working on listening and speaking skills, certainly to emphasize the pronunciation that goes into those types of questions. And then information gap activities provide learners with a lot of opportunities to make use of important job vocabulary words, but also to increase their knowledge, which is of course part of the college and career readiness. One of the main shifts is to increase and build knowledge. So it builds their knowledge about different types of jobs. We can use paragraph frames that allow the learners to write what it is they want to be doing, thinking about their careers, but giving them the scaffold in which to write that. So we're not expecting them, we're not expecting them to have the language right away. But once they see these paragraph frames or these sentence frames, they start becoming familiar with that language. And the idea that this is a career ladder, the career pathway. So it's not just what do I want to be, but what do I want to be in 1 year, in 3 years, in 5 years. And we don't have to do this just with the job. We can do this with other aspects of their life, but I think this is something to really think about. We just need to introduce this concept in our classes. Now, the occupational handbook I showed you before has the materials that make an information gap really easy to put together. So they have quick facts at the top of every page. And so this is on the HVAC, heating, air conditioning, and refrigeration mechanics, computer, ATM, and office machine repairs. And as you can see, I have some information categories on the left that are the same for both, but I have different information on the right. This comes directly from the occupational handbook. And I could just white out certain elements and give that to partner A and white out other elements and give it to partner B, and then they would find out the information they needed. Here's an example. So I have the blue partner is going to tell the information about the HVAC job, and the orange partner is going to give the information about computer repair. And if I wanted to, I could just mix it up too. It doesn't all have to be reporting out. It could be asking and answering questions depending on the level. And OTJT is on the job training. As I mentioned, it's very important to find out which jobs are growing quickly in the area. So if we're going to infuse career awareness, we need to help infuse career awareness about the careers that learners can actually walk into in the situation where they're currently living or where they're planning on living. And so every occupational handbook page, every job has information about how quickly that job is growing. If you see on this one, the job outlook for 2012-22 for HVAC is 21% faster than average, but computer, ATM, and office machine repairs are 4% slower. Now, that's a great inference question. Why do we think that the HVAC job is increasing? Why is the computer and ATM repair decreasing? That's a wonderful higher level thinking question. So this information is readily available to you on that occupational outlook page. These are high growth, but not necessarily high wage jobs right now, something to be aware of. If I do peer dictation, I can have my students learn new information about a job by one student reading to the other student the information and the other student having to take that down. That's, again, focused listening, it's pronunciation. This goes a long way towards contextualization and language development. For reading and writing, again, we're looking at vocabulary and grammar as underpinning the whole process, and spelling becomes part of that as well. So the idea that we would read job profiles or job interest inventories or research job information or write short reports or write about career goals, all of this serves the same language needs that we believe we need to serve and know we need to serve. So it's not that huge of a culture shift. It's just providing learners with the knowledge that they need, even if they are not going into the workforce. The language that they're developing is relevant to adults. Again, with the occupational handbook, you can see that they have a reading. Now, the reading is generally at 11th grade level. Sometimes it goes down to 9th, 10th. So we do have to do some adaptation. The summary chart that I showed you is one way to adapt. And another way is to look at the material that they have there. This is under the tab of what web developers do. And then reduce it down to what we know our learners would be able to handle. So this is an open educational resource that Lori Howard, Sylvia Ramirez, and I are working on for to take these different readings and work them through the A through D levels of the CCRS. So this is higher maybe than you would have thought a literacy level learner would work on, but it makes it possible with teacher support to look at the information and work on something that is really contextualized. And also that $32 an hour is not shabby. At the higher level, we can be asking the learners to do this research, to go into, if you don't have access to the internet, you can supply a certain number of pages from the occupational handbook or other sources, and the learners research what it takes to be a successful web developer. And again, using a sentence frame, this is very keyed into college and career readiness with short research projects. So it's something we know is very much on the minds of everyone who's working on adult education right now, but it's also really specific to what we want to be doing with contextualization. Now that really has to do with exploring careers, what we've just talked about, exploring careers, identifying future pathways. The other side, which is maybe a little more on the interpersonal side of the workplace, can be approached across the board relatively simply in every class. So how would you define soft skills when you think about them? How do you define them? I thought so. That's exactly how I would. But just in case, in general, this is a compilation of definitions all across the web. The character traits and interpersonal skills that characterize a person's relationships with other people. In the workplace, they're considered a complement to hard skills, which refer to a person's knowledge and occupational skills. Some soft skills are more critical than others in different industries. So these are the three that come up as the most important across 100 different main industries in the U.S. But the interesting thing is that it changes depending on the specific industry in some cases. So in manufacturing, these are the three that came up. It really makes sense if you think about what manufacturing is. In healthcare, these came up. And in professional services, administration of offices, these came up. So we can see that there's a broad band of soft skills that we can work with, but we're primarily going to focus on these, and we would have no problem then. If we know that we're focusing on communication no matter what, then problem solving becomes a really important aspect, and certainly reliability connects to learners' persistence. It connects to learners' ability to what they call it, stickiness, their ability to stick with it, the grit. Okay, I'm not going to give you 30 seconds for this because, well, actually, go ahead and if you've got a pen or pencil, just jot down a few soft skills that you can think of. Now, you had a few of them already. You've seen those, so you can write those down if you like. And if you don't want to jot them, if you're just thinking, that's okay too. About another 10 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to reveal, and you see if any of these were ones that you had. Some of them were already revealed to you in previous slides. I love that calm in a crisis. I don't always have that soft skill. Sometimes though. What a wonderful language opportunity this is. I have these. I am these. Now, other than just being able to say what you have and who you are, it's also important to look at the skills in terms of how they fit together. So certainly all the skills you see in red, both the dark red and the light red, are skills that are part of teamwork in the classroom. So you're building these skills with tasks and teamwork. The problem-solving skills could be part of a team. The problem-solving skills in and of themselves also are very important for learners to have for their ability to work autonomously. This is huge in the workplace, the desire to have self-directed, autonomous employees. So we can build in learners' self-direction and autonomy into tasks that are not team-based as well, and problem solve, give them an opportunity to problem solve in those situations. Critical thinking goes right across the board. I think the punctual, responsible, and trustworthy is something that we can talk about through the problem-solving scenarios. And, you know, we can't work with pleasant. I mean, we can hope for pleasant, but certainly patient and adaptable or flexibility. These are things that we can bring up in the classroom. And what's the language that goes along with these things? That's what we have to look at. And if you're interested, there on some of the resources, there's something called a do-say chart. And a lot of you, I think, have probably heard me talk about them. But they provide learners with the physical behaviors that accompany the skill, as well as the kinds of language one would use. Patience, for example. How do you express that you are patient? That's okay. Take your time. I can wait. That language is how a learner demonstrates that he or she has the skill of patience. And that's a very important aspect for us to bring into our classes. Another way to get our soft skills really part of, at the core of what we're doing, is to make sure that we have rubrics, we have assessment, formative and summative assessment tools that put gravitas on these skills. So here's an example of a rubric that learners would have after they've done a team task, and they could rate themselves. And last but certainly not least, problem-solving scenarios are probably one of the very best ways, I know I've hinted about this a few times already, but they're probably one of the very best ways that you can contextualize and integrate all the skills. In fact, I have a little something that says that. So it's integrated skill practice because learners are listening to the problem scenario, reading the problem scenario, discussing the problem scenario, and writing about the problem scenario. It's an authentic situation that learners may encounter or hear about. In this case, I love this is Heide's story, and it's on the site I'm going to give you a link for. But this is about a woman who takes a long lunch, and she doesn't think there's anything wrong with taking a long lunch, and her boss does. And it's a really good story. And by virtue of the fact that it has a workplace connection, it does provide workplace readiness. And of course, there's the soft skill language that comes through not only in the scenario in terms of expressing regret or apologizing, but also in terms of the teamwork in determining the solution. And what is so incredible about a problem-solving scenario is that learners don't just brainstorm to find solutions for the scenario. They have to look at the consequences of those solutions, which is very much a critical thinking element. And then when they present their response, they could be using digital literacy skills, but they for sure are practicing their presentation skills. So that, in a nutshell, was an overview of the rationale and how that rationale weaves through what we do in the classroom in terms of helping learners become more aware of career possibilities, of the career pathways, of what it takes to have a family-sustaining, quote-unquote, good job, as the types of language connections to contextualization. I hope that you've seen it isn't this crazy detour from what we've been doing. It's an on-ramp right into where learners need to be going in the 21st century. And we have two next steps available to you. One is the issue brief, and I'll ask June or Joseph to let you know where that is. And then the other is this link to a wiki that has all of what you've seen today, all of the, the one question survey, and it has a PowerPoint from a longer version on career path, a longer presentation on career pathways. It has a lot of different resources, as does the issue brief. The issue brief is digital, and all the links inside are live. The next step after reading and exploring is for you to try these things out. Look through the materials and see if there's something you want to tweak towards workplace, or meet with your colleagues and go through the issue brief together. Do a little study circle. Those of you that are feeling confused, but although none of you were confused, but maybe some of your colleagues are, the issue brief really lays it out very clearly. Try out the inventories. Take a look at the inventories for yourself. Hopefully you find that you were meant to be a teacher. You should always be a teacher, administrator, or significantly other something. But having a sense of what the materials are that learners will be looking at is a tremendous first step. And before I say it was a pleasure to work with you, let me check and see what questions we have. We have about 4 minutes for questions, 3 minutes for questions.
All right, we have a question and then a comment here. One of the questions was, how do you access the Occupational Outlook Handbook? Is it on a website? And following that, it was a comment that came in from Zelda Rogers that was offering a statement that CareerSource regional boards also have the Florida-specific information on Job Outlook.
Oh, terrific. Thank you so much, Zelda. Yes. The Occupational Handbook, let me show you. I had a link here, so you'll get the link, but it's from the Department of Labor. Sorry, let me just do this, and I'll find it more quickly. But it is, if you would look for the Occupational Handbook. Here it is. It's the Occupational Outlook Handbook, and when you see this PowerPoint, Joseph, will they have this PowerPoint on the IPDay site?
Yes, we're going to, at the few hours at the conclusion of this webinar, we're going to post the recorded version of this, also the document that you're seeing, the presentation, and any supported documents like the issue brief will be made available on the website under ESOL webinars, and you'll see the date for this event.
Perfect. So when you are going through this PowerPoint, you can click on any of these blue links and they will take you there directly. Any other questions, Joseph?
One question was, will I find the scenarios at OnRamp? And I'm not sure the context of what that was referring to back when you were discussing.
Yes, I know what that's referencing, and yes, you will. You'll find what you'll find, and you're talking about the wiki. Let me see. Sorry for this dizzying ride through the... You're talking about this wiki here, the on-ramps to pathways. And yes, the one of the scenarios, the long lunch, is up there. And I'm going to see if I can get some other scenarios up there over the next couple of days. But for sure you have the one up there. And there are, I believe, other problem-solving scenarios linked in HIDA's issue brief.
One last question. Can you give me a place where I can learn about the differing career pathways in ESOL, CTE, and job classification? How to find jobs in the field?
Okay. What I'm thinking you're asking is about, and I'm not 100% sure on that, so feel free to email me. Let me put my email address on here for you. My email address actually is up. Let me just put it in here really quickly. But my thinking is that you're asking about how you determine what the what the career pathways are for different jobs. And if that's the case, there is some information about that. I believe Zelda referenced it. Zelda, maybe you'd be able to put the link in the chat for everybody to see. Is that possible, Joseph?
Yes, she can question it in and I can present it to everybody.
That'd be great. So that way, because you'll want to see there are career pathways for many different states. And so, for example, Illinois has a health careers pathway that may be different from Florida's career pathway, but they're generally the same, but they depend on who's funding which classes. So I think you'd be best looking specifically at what Florida is doing. And then again, if you go to this, to the on-ramp, to the PB Wiki, I have a number of different examples of career pathways up there. So I think that took us right to 101, which is punctual for me. I realize that's 401 for you guys. But punctuality and reliability is very important in the job market. So I will thank you so much for your time. And what I'll do is I don't see Zelda's link posted yet. So what we'll do is we'll get that link and we'll put it into the IPDAY ESOL bucket. So you'll see that information there. Thank you so much, everyone, and I appreciate your putting up with the little technology glitches. I think we got through very well.